The bailiff's voice cut through the courtroom. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison." I stood, feeling every one of my 65 years in my knees. Across the aisle, my sister Linda smoothed her navy suit and arranged her face into what I'd come to recognize as her concerned daughter expression. She'd perfected it over the past 4 years. "Mr. Morrison," Judge Morrison said, settling into her seat, "I understand you're contesting your sister's petition for full guardianship of your father, Thomas Morrison." "Yes, Your Honor." My voice came out steadier than I felt. Linda's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, stood. "Your Honor, my client has been the primary caregiver for Mr. Thomas Morrison for the past 4 years. She's managed his medications, his finances, his medical appointments. Mr. David Morrison here lives in Oregon. Visits maybe twice a year. 3 times, actually," I interrupted. My attorney, James, touched my arm in warning, and has no practical experience with the day-to-day challenges of caring for an elderly parent with advancing dementia. Dementia. There was that word again. The word Linda had been using like a shield for 4 years. "Mr. Morrison," the judge turned to me. "What is your objection to this arrangement?" I took a breath. "Your Honor, my father doesn't have dementia, and I can prove it." The courtroom went still. Linda's face remained composed, but I saw her fingers tighten on the armrest. "That's a serious allegation," Judge Morrison said. "I have evidence." I nodded to James, who pulled out a tablet. 4 years of evidence, actually. Let me back up. This story doesn't start here, in this courtroom in Sacramento. It starts 4 years ago, with a phone call that changed everything. I was in my workshop in Portland when my phone rang. Dad's number. "David?" His voice sounded confused, frightened in a way I'd never heard before. My father had been a Marine, a high school principal, a man who'd raised 2 kids after Mom died of cancer when I was 12. He didn't do frightened. "Dad? What's wrong?" There's money missing from my account. I went to the bank today and..." A fumbling sound, then Linda's voice, bright and cheerful. "David! Hi!" Dad's having one of his confused spells again. You know how it is. "Let me talk to him. He's getting upset. The doctor says we shouldn't agitate him when he's like this. I'll have him call you back when he's calmer." She hung up. I stared at my phone. In 57 years, my little sister had never hung up on me. We weren't particularly close. She'd stayed in California when I moved north for work 30 years ago, but we were cordial. Christmas cards, birthday calls, the occasional family barbecue when I visited. But something in her voice, that brightness. It reminded me of how she used to sound when we were kids, and she was lying to Dad about who broke his tackle box. I called him back. It went to voicemail. I tried 5 more times over the next hour. Finally, Linda texted, "He's sleeping. Doctor's orders no stimulation when he's agitated. I'll have him call tomorrow." He didn't call tomorrow, or the next day. On the 3rd day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Dad calling from a neighbor's phone. "I only have a minute," he whispered. Linda took my phone. "She says it's because I keep losing it. But David, I didn't lose it. And the money, there's $15,000 missing from my savings. When I tried to go to the bank, she said I was too confused to go out. I think she's doing something. But I can't prove it, and everyone believes her because she's here, and you're." The line went dead. I was on a plane the next morning. When I arrived at Dad's house, the same house we'd grown up in, the one he'd sworn he'd die in, Linda met me at the door with a hug and tears. "I'm so glad you're here," she said. "It's been so hard. He's getting worse every day." I found Dad in his armchair, the same one he'd sat in for 40 years. He looked thinner, older. But when he saw me, his eyes were clear. "David." He started to stand. "Dad needs to rest," Linda said quickly. "The doctor says." "What doctor?" I asked. "Dr. Bradley. He's been wonderful, making house calls since Dad's too disoriented to go to the office." Dad's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. And that's when I knew My father had never been quiet in the face of injustice. Silence meant fear. I stayed for 3 days, long enough to notice things. The way Linda controlled every conversation, how she monitored Dad's phone calls, the locked filing cabinet that used to be open, the fact that Dad's checkbook was nowhere to be found. "I handle all the finances now," Linda explained when I asked. "It's too confusing for him. You know how dementia patients get when they try to manage money. The doctor says it's best if I'd like to speak to this doctor." "Of course, I'll set up an appointment." She didn't. Every time I brought it up, there was a reason. The doctor was on vacation. Then his office was renovating. Then Dad had a bad spell and she didn't want to burden the doctor. On my last night, I found Dad alone in the garage, pretending to organize his tools. "She's stealing from me," he said quietly. "Started about 6 months after I had that mini-stroke. I gave her temporary access to help pay bills while I recovered. But then, she never gave it back. And now—" He gestured helplessly. "Who's going to believe me? She's here every day, the devoted daughter. I'm the old man who had a stroke. I believe you. Then help me prove it." I flew home and did what any desperate son would do. I called an attorney, then an investigator. Then I called every advocacy group for elder abuse in California. They all said the same thing. Without evidence, it was his word against hers. And she had documented proof of his dementia. Proof I later learned she'd fabricated with help from Dr. Bradley, who turned out to be her boyfriend. So I got evidence. I started small. Every time I called Dad, I recorded it. His voice was clear, coherent, sharp. He could tell me what he'd eaten for breakfast, what was happening in the news, the scores from the Giants game. Not a confused old man. A sharp 84-year-old who just happened to have a thief for a daughter. Then I installed cameras. It took 3 trips back to California, spread out over 2 months. Tiny cameras, the kind you can buy online. I put one in the living room bookshelf, hidden behind Dad's old engineering textbooks that Linda never touched. One in the kitchen, tucked into the cluster of family photos above the fridge. One in Dad's bedroom, mounted inside the smoke detector. "Are you sure about this?" Dad asked when I showed him where they were. "I'm sure, but you can't let on that, you know. Act normal. Act however you've been acting. Scared and compliant? If that's what keeps you safe." For 4 years, those cameras recorded everything. They recorded Linda going through Dad's mail, intercepting bank statements. They recorded her bringing Dr. Bradley over when Dad was asleep, the 2 of them going through his files. They recorded her on the phone with her husband, Marcus. Just another year or 2 and we'll have enough for that place in Scottsdale. They recorded her coaching Dad to sign documents he couldn't read without his glasses she'd conveniently misplaced. They recorded her telling visitors that Dad was having a bad day when he was perfectly lucid, systematically isolating him from friends. They recorded her finding Dad's hidden cash, $3,000 he'd kept in an old cigar box, and pocketing it while telling him he must have misplaced it. They recorded her increasing his anxiety medication without doctor's orders, keeping him docile. And they recorded the day she told Marcus, "Once I get guardianship, we can sell the house. He'll never know the difference in the nursing home." The nursing home she'd already picked out. The cheapest one she could find, 40 miles away from anyone who knew him. I watched every frame. Every single hour of footage I watched on my laptop in Portland, my hands shaking with rage. Some nights I couldn't sleep. Some nights I wanted to drive down there But James, my attorney, kept me focused. "We do this right," he said. "We document everything. We build a case so airtight she can't breathe, and then we nail her." So I documented. I cross-referenced timestamps with bank records I'd obtained through a legal request. Every withdrawal Linda had made, I could match to footage of her at Dad's desk, forging his signature. $10,000,000. That's what she'd stolen over 4 years, from a retired principal living on a pension and Social Security. She'd taken it slowly, carefully. A few thousand here for medical expenses, a few thousand there for home modifications. Always with forged documentation, always with plausible explanations. But it added up. and I had it all. The guardianship petition was her final play. Once she had legal control, she could do anything. Sell the house, move him into memory care, drain what was left of his accounts, and there'd be nothing anyone could do about it. Except I could do something. Back in the courtroom, Judge Morrison was looking at the tablet James had handed her. "Your Honor," Linda's attorney said, "this is highly irregular. We weren't provided with any evidence in discovery. Because we just completed compiling it," James said smoothly. 4 years of continuous surveillance footage. All of it showing Mr. Thomas Morrison in complete possession of his mental faculties, and all of it showing Miss Linda Morrison systematically defrauding her father. Linda's face had gone white. "That's not. You can't just spy on people. California is a two-party consent state for audio recording and private conversations," her attorney said quickly. "This evidence is inadmissible." "The cameras were installed by Mr. Thomas Morrison in his own home," James countered. He consented. He was aware, and he participated actively in documenting his daughter's theft. Judge Morrison looked up. "I'd like to hear from Mr. Thomas Morrison himself." My father stood in the back of the courtroom where he'd been sitting quietly for the past hour. Linda had fought to have him excluded from the hearing, claiming he'd be too confused, too upset, but he'd insisted on being here. At 88, he still stood straight. Still had that principles bearing that made you want to sit up straighter. "Your Honor," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "I am not confused. I do not have dementia, and my daughter has been stealing from me for 4 years while pretending to care for me. I'm tired of pretending to be helpless to keep myself safe." The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'd like to see this evidence. All of it. Bailiff, please escort Miss Morrison and her attorney to the conference room. We'll reconvene in 1 hour." That hour turned into 3, then 6. By the time we all filed back into the courtroom, Linda's face was blotchy, her eyes red. Marcus, her husband, had arrived and was sitting rigid in the gallery. Judge Morrison's expression was cold. In 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a calculated, sustained pattern of elder abuse. "Miss Morrison, you are stripped of any power of attorney, medical proxy, or financial access to your father. Furthermore, I am ordering a full audit of all accounts you have accessed on his behalf. The district attorney's office will be receiving a copy of all evidence presented today." Linda started crying. Real tears this time, not the practiced ones I'd seen her use on Dad. "Your Honor," her attorney began, but Judge Morrison held up a hand. "I'm not finished. Mr. Thomas Morrison, do you wish to pursue criminal charges against your daughter?" Dad looked at Linda. For a moment, I thought he might waver. She was still his daughter, still the little girl he'd raised after Mom died. But then he said, "Yes, I do." The DA moved fast once they had the evidence. Linda was charged with elder abuse, theft, fraud, and forgery. Dr. Bradley was charged as an accomplice. Marcus was charged with conspiracy and money laundering. Turned out he'd been helping Linda hide the money in offshore accounts. The trial took 8 months. I flew down for every day of it, sitting behind Dad, watching as the prosecution played clip after clip from those cameras. The jury watched Linda steal. They watched her lie. They watched her gaslight an old man who just wanted to live in his own home. It took them 4 hours to convict her on all counts. 18 years. That's what the judge gave her. Dr. Bradley got 12. Marcus got 8. Linda's attorney tried to appeal, arguing that the sentence was too harsh, that she was a first-time offender, that she had children who needed her. The appellate court denied it. Elder abuse, they noted, was a particularly heinous crime, a betrayal of trust that deserved harsh punishment. I moved Dad to Portland after the trial. He didn't want to stay in that house anymore. Didn't want the memories. We found him a small condo near my place, close enough that I could check on him daily, but far enough that he had his independence. He thrived. Turned out, without the stress of Linda's abuse, without the anxiety medication she'd been secretly giving him, Dad's mind was sharp as ever. He joined a book club, started volunteering at the library, even went on a few dates with a widow from his building. I wasted 4 years being scared, he told me one night over dinner. 4 years acting helpless because I thought no one would believe me. You weren't helpless. You let me help you, and together we got justice. Still, I should have fought harder. Sooner. Dad, she had a doctor backing her up. She had legal documents. She had positioning. You did exactly what you needed to do to survive until we could prove the truth. He nodded, but I could see the regret in his eyes. The anger at himself for being vulnerable, for needing help. 2 years after Linda went to prison, Dad met Carol. She was 83, a retired teacher with a sharp wit and a love for terrible puns. They got married at the courthouse, small ceremony, just me and Carol's son and a handful of friends. At the reception, Dad pulled me aside. I never thought I'd be happy again after your mother, and then I never thought I'd survive Linda, but here I am. Here you are. Because of you. Because you believed me when everyone else thought I was just a confused old man. You're my dad. He hugged me, and for a moment I was 12 again, and he was the one holding our family together after Mom died. Linda writes sometimes, from prison. Long letters about how sorry she is, how she never meant for it to go so far, how the money problems she and Marcus had just snowballed, how she loves Dad really. She just made terrible choices. Dad doesn't read them. I do, because someone should witness her excuses, even if no one believes them. She'll be 76 when she gets out. Dad will be gone by then. He knows it. We all know it. She'll never get to apologize in person. Never get to make amends. That's her punishment. Not just the years in prison, but the years she'll spend knowing she destroyed the relationship with her father for money she never even got to enjoy. It's all been recovered, returned to Dad's accounts. She got nothing except a prison cell and the knowledge that she betrayed the man who raised her. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty, if I wish I'd handled it differently, given Linda a chance to return the money and avoid prison. I don't, because it wasn't just about the money. It was about the fear she put in my father's eyes, the way she made him question his own mind, the isolation, the control, the systematic destruction of his autonomy. You don't get second chances when you abuse someone who loved and trusted you. Dad passed away last year at 92 in his sleep, with Carol holding his hand. He'd had 7 good years after Linda went to prison. 7 years of freedom, dignity, love. At his funeral, someone asked if we'd told Linda, if she'd be allowed to attend. No, I said. She lost that right. She'd stolen 4 years from him. I wasn't going to let her steal his final goodbye, too. The cameras are still in a box in my garage. Sometimes I think about throwing them away, but I keep them. A reminder that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. And sometimes, the only way to prove the truth is to document it, frame by frame, until the evidence is so overwhelming that no one can deny it. Linda will be released in 14 years. Dad's been gone for 1. I'm 67 now, retired, living in the same house I raised my own kids in. I don't think about her much. But when I do, I remember Dad's face in that courtroom, standing tall, speaking clearly, reclaiming his voice after 4 years of being silenced. That's the image I keep. Not Linda crying, not the verdict, not the sentence. Just Dad, standing up, telling his truth, and finally being heard. That's justice.